Welcome to a Look Back Machine Shorty. This is the story of Goofy About Health, an attraction that was at Epcot's The Wonders of Life Pavilion. Here's Imagineer Chick Russell with the story of Goofy About Health.
Well, I started at Walt Disney Imagineering in late '87. Everybody at that time was kind of being assigned to the Euro Disney project. And so that left all the kind of junior people like myself at the time to pick up all the work that nobody else wanted to do. And that was kind of Wonders of Life at that time. So we ended up with a lot of fresh faces on that whole project. Writer Scott Hennessy was the originator of the idea for the show. But then he got pulled into another really fun show at Wonders of Life called Cranium Command. And so they needed someone else to step in. And so they selected me with my vast experience. The premise was that you could use the Goofy shorts, the animated shorts that Disney made in the 40s and 50s. And there was enough really unhealthy things that he did in those shorts. They made about 50 of these Goofy shorts that you could string all those unhealthy things together and make a show that would tell you how to live a healthy life by not doing what Goofy did. The whole premise of Wonders of Life, which was sponsored by MetLife, an insurance company, was that you can control your own health by the way you live your life. Of course, that would save them some money on paying medical charges out to people. So anyway, that was the premise for how I got assigned and what the assignment was. So when I first got the assignment to work on Goofy About Health, I told them, well, I need to look at all the Goofy shorts. And they said, okay. So they sent me over to the studio and I met with the archivist over there. And I said, I would like to get every single Goofy cartoon that was ever made because I'm doing this show for Epcot. And of course, the archivist looked at me like I was a little bit crazy. He said, what are you going to do? You're going to sit down and watch all 50 shorts? I said, yes. So at that time, the technology was a 3/4 inch videotapes. And so I went over and picked up a couple boxes full of Goofy shorts. And then I brought them back over to Imagineering on Flower Street. And I went back to one of the rooms they have there for screening. And I basically watched every one of those cartoons, kind of back to back almost. And my wife tells me that I was beginning to walk a little bit like Goofy and talk a little bit like Goofy after I watched all these things. As I screened them all, every time Goofy would do anything unhealthy, which was almost every second, the Disney animators had a lot of fun putting Goofy in these horrible circumstances where he either was sick and couldn't sleep and was taking all kinds of medicines to try to get well. They had fun with him with incredible anger behind the steering wheel of a car, kind of turning into to a monster when he's behind the wheel, cutting people off and swearing. But when he gets back home and gets out of his car, he becomes a nice person again. So they had all these different kinds of gags they came up with that they used in the films. And so we were able to pull those off out of the films and put them in the right sequence of this Goofy About Health show, so they all kind of made sense. I would take a screenshot of it, and back then screenshots were done on a paper printout. And then I put all the shots that I took, I pinned them up on a huge storyboard and began to group them around different unhealthy things like smoking and like driving like a maniac and drinking. It's an interesting, series of Goofy cartoons because everyone who first saw Goofy saw him in cartoons back in the late 30s and early 40s with Donald and Mickey, of course, and a little bit of Daisy and Pluto. And then in the probably early 40s or so, someone got the idea of doing just these Goofy shorts, and he would be kind of every man who was struggling to get by and all these things were happening to him, and he was charged to kind of overcome them. So that's what most of these clips come from, is those Goofy films that were made during that time period. When I first went over to the studio, they didn't seem to really understand what we were trying to do. And so they let me have access to all the clips, and so that was never a problem getting that from them. What was a bit of a challenge was the look of Goofy changed over time. Early on, he looked more like he did in the cartoons of the late 30s when he was with Mickey and Donald in some of their shorts. But for these shorts, his ears got longer and dangled down, and so he looked a little different. So I had to kind of work around that, make sure I didn't have two different looks for Goofy cut back to back, and I was able to kind of cut around that. The 3/4-inch video tapes that I was reviewing to select the scenes were basically just for me to screen. Once I selected all the scenes that I wanted, I then went back over to the studio and I asked them to give me a high quality, I believe it was 1-inch tape at that time. And they then laid all the cartoons that I selected, all the shorts, and put them on a 1-inch reel. So we had very high quality film to videotape copies. And then I took those 1-inch tapes back over to Imagineering, and the editor I work with is David Jones. And then we had the challenge of beginning to put all the footage together. Of course, the first step was I needed to write a script using all this different clips. And so I wrote a script, and they kind of began to group together into story beats that I could then use. And so that was pretty much how I began the process.
Behold the city, that marvelous microcosm of human activity, where the wheels of commerce spin smoothly for the common good, where society can mingle for an entertaining night on the town, and where family life flourishes in the embrace of domestic harmony. In this urban paradise, we have located one individual who has reached the very pinnacle of health and fitness. It is now our pleasure to present the unqualified champion of healthy living.
In the theme park world, we have to find, kind of clever ways to use media. The concept was that rather than just running these clips on one screen, wouldn't it be fun to do 7 screens and put the screens into a set of a city, and each of the windows of this cityscape would have a screen, and then we would run multiple images at multiple times. Make it more of a show than just watching a video monitor or a projection screen. So this was a way to really do a theatrical presentation, because we had that set of the small town there, and then it gave you different places to look as we would run some video in one of the windows, and then we had some animation done by Bear Animation, which were different kinds of window closures like Venetian blinds and shades and shutters. And when we finished the clip, we would close that window and open another window, and then the next clip would begin over there. Each of the clips were somewhat tied to the building they were in. I think we had a bar, we had an office building, we had his home, and 3 or 4 other kind of window fronts. So you were kind of watching these things almost, like just a number of images coming up on different screens. We didn't do any kind of testing with any audiences. We felt that this technique would work because every time we opened a window in the set with some video, there'd be a sound effect coming from that direction. So your eye would just be normally drawn to the action in the window and the sound effect coming from that window, and people would just were able to figure it out and look where they were supposed to look. The key was making sure the other windows were always closed when we wanted to focus on one window. And so it's the editing of this was something pretty complicated, because you had to keep in mind what was going on each of the 7 screens all the time. And every now and then, when some big catastrophe happened, we would have all the shutters and all the blinds and all the Venetian blinds all open up, and you'd see this cacophony of horrible medical problems that Goofy was having. So that was a thrilling experience. The other thing we did new with the tech was to actually activate the set around these screens. And so we developed a number of lighting gags that would be triggered at the right time with the show, one of which was a sign over a hotel that said Ritz Hotel. But when Goofy's health began to deteriorate, we knocked out the leg in the R, and it said the Pitts Hotel. So that was one of the gags we used. And then there was a car, front of a car in the set, and we actually used the windshield as a video screen. So we were able to put Goofy's face right in the car. And luckily, in some of the shorts we used, there are kind of close-ups of his face in the cartoon, and it looked pretty good. It filled the windshield of the set car, and we could turn the headlights on and off in that car in sync when we needed to do that. And there are a couple other things, other lighting effects that happened. The set helped tie the whole show together.
Our friend has truly created a paradise on Earth.
The video control system worked back then, was actually 7 sources. So each window had its own video source. And I believe at that time they were using video discs, which was at that time the state of the art for theme park video playback. And so these things were all synced up, and they would, when the show signal said start, all 7 of these video discs would start up. Each one was recorded in such a way that it was playing the exact right thing at the exact same time. So window 1 the shade would be closed, and maybe all the 6 of these windows would be closed in their respective videos, but the one that had the scene on it, that one would be playing whatever that scene is. And then all these discs would play at the same time, and the right media would always show up in the right window at the right time. To kind of tie the show together and make it feel coherent, we felt we needed some new animation. I already mentioned we needed new animation for the window closures, Venetian blinds, curtains, and shades. And so we went to a company called Bear Animation, and they did all that for us, kind of in the style and color of the Disney cartoons of the late 30s and early 40s. Then there's a song in the show that I wrote called "The Unhealthy Living Blues," and for that song, we had the Bears create a singing doctor who was basically singing this song and kind of telling Goofy what's wrong with him and how he could straighten out his life by living a healthy life. So that was a pretty fun song. I wrote the lyrics, and a guy by the name of George Wilkins wrote the song, and I think it was a pretty good song and pretty well received.
The doctor diagnosed our friend's problem as the dreaded but all too common unhealthy living blues. Health is your responsibility. The doctor's your friend, so listen to me. Running all over town is what made you crack. Blood pressure's up near a heart attack. You got those unhealthy living blues. Oh yeah. Overeating has added those calories, and cholesterol's clogged up your arteries. Your body ain't food like dangerous drugs. You can't survive on coffee slugs. You got those unhealthy living blues. If you keep inhaling that cigarette smoke, you can get emphysema or cancer and coke. Drinking too much ain't very smart. You're involving your liver, your brain, and your heart. You got the blues, baby. You got those unhealthy living blues. Oh, yeah.
but obviously it was a very inexpensive show to do because the majority of the animation was already existing. So it was really just the cost of the blinds, the singing doctor, and the music composition and the sets. So it may be the all-time least expensive show that Disney ever did.
Oh, live on a healthy way, feeling better every single day. Saving plenty of time for play, hooray for healthy way.
One of the things I remember about Goofy About Health was it was a fresh team of people, many doing their first work for Disney. I was a little surprised that they would give me that show to write, to direct and produce. I was just lucky that everybody else was jumping on the Euro Disneyland project, and so they were really hurting for people to work on things, and so it gave myself and a lot of other people that were starting in the late 80s there a chance just to dive right in and do things. Of course, they hired people like myself and others because we had a track record, obviously, of writing and directing and producing, but not for Disney and not for the theme park. So we just had to quickly get up to speed on that. And most of us did not have experience putting media into sets, into attractions. And so there was a learning curve there for us too, to understand everything about how sets are built, and also show and media control, which is something new, particularly when you have 7 different screens running at the same time and the show is bouncing from screen to screen to screen, and you want everything to stay in sync.
It seems our friend is truly gone. Goofy About Health.